Hey, well, again, welcome to the. I decided to start calling it the monthly Monday meetup. So the triple M, and we do this, of course, every month and tackle a different topic. So this month's topic is going to be about finishing your game. And boy, can I relate to this topic. I am I am king of the hill when it comes to starting things and then getting so many things going that I'm not finishing things. So I can definitely relate to that. Um, and as the nature of this particular meetup goes, this is an open discussion rather than some sort of pre-programmed presentation or something. So right off the bat, I was curious to hear everybody else's experience with this concept of finishing things, whether you're extremely successful at it or maybe, as I just shared, not so successful at it. Why don't you start us off, Tony?
Yeah, sure. I am moderately successful at finishing projects, and I think the secret to that is setting external deadlines. So if I'm working on a game and I've advertised a deadline of showing, say, the beta version of the game at an in person event, then I know I need to get it done by then. But also just being consistent about scheduling and also being very strict about scoping are two big parts of getting games done. And we can talk about that later as this discussion goes on.
Uh-huh. Okay. Thanks. So you strike me, Tony, as somebody who does get their things done.
For the most part, I often have too many irons in the fire, and that is, I think, a problem that we all have. This is a creative industry. You come up with all kinds of ideas, and you want to work on all of them at the same time. And sometimes you just need to buckle down and get something done to free up time for your next project.
Awesome. Great note. And yeah. All right. Oh, it looks like we also have Jerry who has joined us. Um, Jerry, this is this particular format of the stage allows up to five people to talk at once, which means if you would like to chat uh, in voice, you are welcome to. And just let us know.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to join in. I think this is my first time joining in on the monthly Monday meetings, but definitely a topic I can relate to or am interested in.
Fantastic. Well, thanks. I'm not sure if you caught the very beginning, but I just want to make sure you know that this is very open. We want to hear what you have to say. This is a conversation, not a lecture. Okay.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
the question we're posing that right now is what is everybody's experience with whether you're having difficulty sometimes getting things done. And I'll let you think about that, Jerry, and we'll go to Michael. What do you think, Michael?
Uh, Repeat the question again. Sorry.
Sure, sure, sure. We were talking about what your personal experience is, whether you struggle with getting things done, and or whether you're one of those kind of people who has this kind of nailed down and really knows how to start and complete projects. I started off by admitting that this is something I definitely struggle with because I end up with too many things going on.
No. Um, I would say it's nuanced for me. I have not been great at finishing projects till recently, personally, just because didn't have all the skills I needed to solo dev. But like if I am in a company, um, like I'm pretty good at finishing tasks, but it sometimes gets a bit frustrating when like one set of people want to go one way and
Sure.
divergence in goals happens a little too much sometimes.
All right, makes sense. You want to jump in, Carlos?
Yeah, sure. I am personally just absolutely terrible about completing projects personally. I've definitely been getting better at it, specifically personal projects. So when it comes to work, the day-to-day, it's not too bad. But I personally have what I assume is probably a pretty relatable problem to many other indie developers or developers in general, where I just create so many prototypes and ideas and these just like experiments that don't necessarily go anywhere. Um, and it's very similar to like having too many things, spinning too many plates. But it's just there's so many little projects that I end up starting and not following through with or haven't fallen through with over the years. And the big thing that started changing that for me was getting more serious about focusing on things, like picking something to focus on or a set of things to focus on, and setting deadlines for myself. So when you don't have deadlines, external or internal, there really isn't anything holding you accountable to get that project done. Um, and that's something that I've found that's making it a little bit better. I'm still bad about it because I'm still spreading myself a little thin in places, but it's definitely different than when I first started game development.
I was listening to a podcast recently, actually on writing novels, fantasy novels, sci-fi novels in particular in this case. And the person who was speaking gave some advice on when to quit, which is something that we don't discuss very often.
Good
And
point.
his advice was there are 2 points in a novel, and I think the same thing applies to indie games. There are 2 points at which you should quit working on a project, and then at other times you should see it through to at least some stage of completion. The first is once you have your idea down on paper and you've run it by a few people, you think about their feedback, and if they get really excited, you continue. But if there's no excitement, both for you as someone who would be making the game and your potential players, then that's a good one to just save your notes, save it off to a Google Doc or something, and quit right there. There's no sense like forging ahead on something that's just not exciting or doesn't have legs. But then after that, if it is something that's exciting to you and potential players, get an entire prototype done. That doesn't mean a vertical slice, and it doesn't mean everything in the game is implemented, but something that is representative of the core gameplay. It could be the core game hook or the core atmosphere and story, but get it to a point essentially like when you're writing a novel, you have a first draft. And then at that point, you run it by some people. If you're still excited about it, and if players are excited about it, you continue with it there. Otherwise, you quit. I see a lot of people who will get to that prototype stage and they're like, well, I've invested all this time. I've sunk all this time. I have to finish it and release it. But if it's not going to be worth your time to do that, no one's going to enjoy it, you're not going to enjoy making it, then that's the second time to quit. But then after that, just get it done.
I love it. I love it. Gosh, I can't think of it. There's actually a term for when you've invested so much in a project that you think you have to finish it. And I can't remember what that
sunk cost fallacy.
Say that again.
The sunken cost fallacy.
Very good. Sunken cost fallacy.
Which I will say, publishers are good at rooting out. Sometimes.
Yeah, but I think once, if you are at the point in your project where you're seeking out a publisher, but the publisher isn't going to be interested in, if no publishers, I should say, are going to be interested in it, because some publishers, are interested in specific genres. But if no publisher is going to be interested in it, then you did not quit it soon enough. You should have quit that project at the end of the prototype stage.
But it's also like, I've been watching stuff that is non-game industry and seeing how like people get eliminated from like a investment cohort or like I've been watching, like, it's called Dream Academy and Popstar Academy, if you're familiar, but there's a band that was called Cat's Eye, big popular band with Gen Z now, but they had like 120 people apply to be part of it and narrowed it down to 6, but it is interesting to see those types of processes and how it kind of works too.
It looked like Carlos wanted to.
I did want to give our other participant, Jerry, a chance to jump in as well. So let's let him do that, and then we can open it up to more detailed feedback.
Yeah, I think I totally resonate with what you guys are saying, and I think Michael has a point too. With I think like if you're like building a bridge or something, then you kind of have to stick it through. But I think with games, if it's like a passion project, then there should be excitement there, and it makes sense that you should be more okay with failing. This is something I think I struggle with too. Like every project, you kind of want it to be a success, but I think sometimes you're measured not by like you're like measured by your highest highs, not all your projects, I guess. So if you make like one great project and a ton of failures, people will still remember their great project. I hope so. I hope. So yeah, I totally agree with what Tony was saying. Like fail often, fail fast is like a motto I've been trying to like implement more, I guess, too.
Yeah, agreed. I love that saying, fail often, fail fast. And it can be really hard to fight against the urge to succumb to the sunk cost fallacy. It's really, really easy, especially when you put a lot of time into it. The more time you put in, the harder it is to say, maybe this isn't, we should step away from this. But I think it's important to also note that just because you're walking away from an idea or a concept doesn't mean that you can't return to it sometime in the future. It's a lot of times it's just often not the right time for that idea or project. I mean, and we see that all the time, right? Like in the gaming markets where it's like, oh man, if this game had just come out 3 years earlier or 3 years later, it would have been huge or whatever. And so timing has a lot to do with it too. It's not a total failure to back away from a project and just put it on the back burner. Like it's not gone, it's not wasted effort. And maybe 3 years later you'll realize, oh, if I just do this or change it in this way, it's going to be 10 times better and it's the right time for it. The market's hungry for something like this and I can go back to this project again. And now I'm really excited about it. That can happen. That can certainly happen.
Kind of like global agenda, versus Overwatch. Like now would actually be a good time for global agenda to come back. If any of you remember that game.
Yeah. Hey, Jerry, you had something?
Yeah. it's also like you learn a lot from your failures too. So I think it's not like it's probably like a bad perspective to just look at it like, oh, I quit the game, I failed. I think I've learned more from like my unfinished projects than from the projects where I had like deadlines and stuck it out. But they're both like have their own rewards, I guess.
Good. And I think the issue here is we all seem to be dealing, kind of discussing the too many projects at one time issue, for example, is clearing your plate. And that means when you've decided if to quit something and perhaps archive it for later thought, um, that's part of that whole clearing your plate so you can focus on what is important. It you had made one comment, Tony, and I don't want to misrepresent it, but it was basically something like, well, if you got to the point where you haven't found a publisher who's interested in what you're doing, maybe you should have quit earlier. Um, I'm not sure that's the litmus test because obviously there's other options than finding a publisher, right? So I think the one step backward from that is understanding why you're doing what you're doing. Clearly, if you're doing it because it's a business and you've got a goal that you have to finish so that you can make some income off of this, you'll have different considerations on when it's time to quit than maybe if it's a passion project and you don't really care if it's financially successful. So you have to measure things against what your goals are, or measure your progress. I shouldn't have said success because, as we've all talked about, success. Uh, yeah, even creating something that doesn't uh, happen or doesn't get published doesn't mean it was worthless. It doesn't mean you didn't learn a lot. So
So,
Yes, discussing success is a can of worms in and of itself.
yeah, Carlos, you mentioned
well,
something interesting, which was you said that some projects take a really long time before you get to that point where you can really evaluate it and see, does this project have legs? And maybe part of finishing a game is reining in scope. Would it be worth it to discuss how we handle scope creep, and more importantly, identifying what the core scope is at the very beginning?
good point. Good point. Because one of the main, I think, in my experience, you're absolutely right. One of the main things that keeps a game unfinished is scope creep, and the constant desire to do something new. And that's especially bad in a project that's taken some time because what happens is a year goes by and the whole industry has changed and you're thinking, oh well, man, now I've got to change everything. But if you take that approach, you'll never finish. You'll always feel like you have to change it to make it more modern, more current, whatever. So let's talk about scope. How how can we? Who has some advice on how to keep scope from overwhelming us?
I don't know if I have advice, but I think like my in my experience when I just want to make a fun game, I guess is like it sounds simple, but then when I'm making it, I there's like a saying where you like can't polish dirt, and I can't like tell if it's like a fun game or if I just keep on adding like visual effects or like little juice features and keep on adding scope and trying to make it feel fun. So I think that's like a related issue here where uh, like maybe you at some point you can't tell if the thing you're making is fun or engaging, and then that's why you end up keeping like adding features and scope creeps up like too high. I think if you're really like I think a good point someone said before is like if their whole team is having fun playing the game, that's how they know if they made like a hit. So maybe that could be like your indicator that it's like a good time to release or iterate.
Yeah, Jerry, I agree with you 100% there. I feel like scope creep is not a problem, but it's a symptom of an earlier problem. And that problem is failure to identify and adhere to the core conceit, the core hook, or the core pillars of your game to begin with. So if you don't really have a very clear vision of what the core hook, let's say hook. I mean, you can have a game with a hook, or you can have some other kind of like core essence to the game. But if that is not clearly defined, and part of doing this initial exploration is to find that core idea. But if that idea is not clearly defined when you really go into production, then you're just, like you said, Jerry, going to keep glomming on new features in the hope that something is fun. But if you can find that core thing that's really exciting and fun, then you can focus just on that, not add new features, and actually get your game done.
Very good. So let's say you're in the middle of a project and you find that you're floundering and you discover that you have not done this. So maybe your first step when you've identified that is to now, kind of put a ceasefire on your project and say, look, go to your team and say, we need to get to that. We need to redefine, we need to consider and define what our scope is. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? And let's make sure that anything that's not accomplishing that is going to be cut. That's it's really hard to do sometimes, but it's one of those kind of life lessons in succeeding at all in life, is focus on the goal and learn how to say no to things that don't feed into that goal. And so it's certainly the same with game development, that we have to have very well-defined goals and then learn how to say no. When somebody says, what about this? No. Or some version of shelve it, maybe later, but no, we're not going to work on it right now.
So how do we identify those goals, or really, hopefully, that one goal, that one core goal or one core essence of the game?
Yeah, I want to ask. I was going to say, like, sometimes I don't know what the right feature or goal is, but I just know, like, this isn't it. I'll say like, oh, this doesn't hit it, but I don't know exactly what would hit that sweet spot.
Yeah, there's a few techniques out there. I know that one that I like a lot is establishing design pillars on a project. So, or core game pillars. So, if your core game pillars, you're making a horror game and your core game pillars are scary, intense, and on edge or something. If there's the component or a mechanic that isn't in the spirit or fulfillment of those core pillars, well, then you've got a really good idea that you might be inching into the realm of scope creep, right? Where it doesn't really fit the core pillars we've established and agreed on for the game, and maybe we're just adding this because it sounds like it'd be cool, and it probably would, but that's how you get into scope creep territory, is when you come up with all these cool ideas and you want to try them all out, and then next thing you know, you've got a bloated project full of hundreds of features, right?
I'm going to jump off the stage so that Joe Fox can join in, but I do want to ask something, Carlos. When you were listing those pillars, you listed like intense, scary, edge of your seat, but honestly, that sounds like any game that's trying to be a horror game. how do you identify core pillars that give your game something unique? And I'll jump off.
Yeah, I probably could have given better examples there. I was trying to think of something off the top of my head, but yeah, it's going to be different for every game, and it really depends on what you're going for. Man, I really wish I could like think of better pillars for like something more concrete, like a I don't know. When I think of like a bullet hell game, I think of games that are it's going to be an intense gameplay loop. It's going to be very difficult, and it's going to be very flashy typically. But perhaps you want to do something different with that genre. You may have another pillar or a different pillar that replaces one of those key elements that you're going for, right? It just kind of it really, really depends on the project and what the goal of the project is.
I think this is where it's also like game dev is kind of like an art too. So this is kind of where like it's hard to like science it out, but it's like subjective and up to the artist. I think well, some like techniques that kind of can help is like constraint-based creativity. If you add in like that's why like game jams have themes, or if you add in like some constraints and see what you can like creatively come up with that can maybe differentiate your product from other people's. Just like randomly I saw on TikTok like a guy who's making songs, he writes a bunch of like different words or prompts, puts them in a jar, and just like takes them out randomly, and then he'll make a song about like in that theme or like about that prompt that he picks out of the fish jar. So I think like constraint, I don't know, it's like very hard to like reproduce creativity or like have the magic like recipe there, but I think there are like some ways to like excite your like brain or
Sure. That Game Jam was a perfect example. They give you a theme, and you have to stick to that theme. So yeah, defining constraints. It's a common saying that the best creativity can come out of constraints. So whether sometimes those constraints, like in a lot of my work, it was client based. So my clients would often define what those constraints are. It may be a little bit harder when it's your own project to think about what those constraints might be, but I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, you notice in a game jam, there's typically one theme. It gives you one focus. I want to push back a little bit on the idea of design pillars. And this is just for sake of discussion here. Game Dev YouTube can be a little bit dangerous because you get all kinds of weird advice. Some people recommend, when you're designing your game, come up with 3 to 5 pillars. And maybe that's good, but maybe trying to come up with multiple things that your game is, especially at that early stage, leads you to not having a focus on the single thing that makes your game cool. And instead, if we were to identify the one hook or the one essential aspect of your game and focus solely on that one thing rather than multiple pillars or multiple anchors, then we might have a better game and a game that we can finish in a more reasonable time.
No, I think that's a great point, Tony. And it really, because it's really important, I think, to focus on one mechanic at a time. I think it's really tempting, especially as game fans and game developers, to want to squeeze a bunch of mechanics into a game because I want to combine this mechanic and this mechanic and that mechanic, and I want to put them all together in this really cool concept that I have, and there's nothing wrong with doing that necessarily, but focus when you're working on the project, keeping a focus on making sure that that one mechanic is as great as it can be is like really important, especially when starting out, because it's way better to have a game where the concept is solid, the story is solid, but it only has one primary mechanic that is just really good, than it is to have a game with three half-baked mechanics. I feel like you see it all the time where those games just don't really hit the same way as like, wow, this game did this really well.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll
Carlos.
notice as I've been going, I've been making some notes for us all, and I modified the note that talks about defining pillars to say maybe it's better to just have one pillar. Yeah, great.
Another advantage of one pillar is that typically when a player looks back on having played a game, they'll remember that game for one thing. They might remember the level design in a certain game, or a specific mechanic in like Dome Keeper or something. But when you have just the one thing, you can focus on that. You can get your game done. Your first game, you're going to find some people who love it, especially if you have that one thing that you really do well. But you're not going to find like a wide player base for it. Let's just be honest here. And your second game is going to be the same, and your third game is going to be the same. So many people feel like, oh, I have one game in me. I need to make my dream game to begin with, and it's fine to like start with your dream game. You're going to start. You may fail at it. You set it to the side for a while, make another game, pick up your dream game later. But you really need to abandon the idea that you can only make one game and you have to throw everything that you have ever dreamed of in that game, and just make a lot of games, small games.
Good. So that's a whole different kind of suggestion, which I totally love. Is instead of trying to get that one big project that you've been trying to get done, maybe a good precursor to that is to just get the simplest possible game out there so that you have completed something. Any other continue?
I'm just going to jump in real quick and say, don't just complete something, but complete something that is cool, small but cool, but
right.
Something that really has an interesting idea to it, but just one idea that's small.
I really like this. It's like instead of one game that has too much quantity, like a ton of features that ends up being low quality, it's try to aim for many games that are each high quality. So instead of one game that does everything, multiple games that do one thing.
Yep. I have
Awesome.
a list of projects I have designs for that I keep and review on a relatively regular basis. But, like, I make the designs even if I don't actually produce them.
Awesome. This is great. I have something we'll discuss like during the last 10 minutes. But open up the floor again. We've come up with such great ideas, I really think. And Tony's favorite word is actionable. I would love, let's each one of us after this session, for each one of these monthly Monday meetups, we create a topic that we call the topic of the month. And I think a great follow-up to this would be for each of us to go into that channel, which I'll create as soon as the discussion is over with, and maybe create a little list of things, of actionable items that you've taken away from today's session, things that you're going to do now that are going to help you finish your projects. I'm going to do that. And I think I would encourage all of us to go in and do that as well. And any other ideas then?
Well, as Tony mentioned, I actually have a prototype if anyone wants to test that afterwards, I can spin it up and let people play with it. So,
Great.
I actually, finished the prototype.
All right, yeah, I'm definitely in.
Timely, I suppose, for the topic.
So I have another aspect to this topic that I think might be useful for all of us to discuss. I work from a home office, and that means that occasionally I have some distractions like, oh, I know that I need to get laundry done, so I'll take a little break and get laundry done. Or my dog, like right now, is asking to be fed. And since I can set my own schedule, I need to be fairly diligent about adhering to that schedule. What I do is I work on an hour by hour basis in a certain, well, 2 time periods during the day where I work the first 45 minutes of the hour and then I take a 15-minute break to rest my eyes. I step away from the computer. I take care of anything that I need to take care of, phone calls, house chores, walking the dog, in that 15 minutes, and then I'm refreshed to start the next hour. But sometimes, some other pressures make me shift my schedule. How do you all manage your schedules, especially if you have a day job? Because most indies do have a day job and they're working on this, say, nights and weekends. But do you have any thoughts, difficulties, or tips?
I also take breaks.
Okay,
I don't know that I take a break every hour, but I definitely, look at the time because I often have meetings on the hour and stuff like that. I'll evaluate, I guess, if I need a break or but I guess I'm a little more evaluative than just doing it every day.
I think one thing that helps me is like if I can turn it into a habit, then it's like I think I was told it takes more energy to get yourself to not do something than to do something. And if it's a habit, then it's like the activation energy is kind of lower. It's still like definitely something I struggle with too. Like I have this like little lockbox to like lock my phone away, and it works. But now I feel like it's high energy to put my phone in the lockbox because I know like, oh my god, I'm not gonna be able to get distracted for the next so and so time. So it's definitely something to work on. But I think turning things into habits definitely helps.
So,
Yeah, I am
okay,
so
Carlos.
I'm so historically bad about this. Um, I'm the type of person who I will get off my day job and go straight to working on games. And I mean, honestly, I've had to kind of force myself to do like play video games to like kind of take a break. Sometimes I sometimes even trick myself into playing them by convincing myself, oh, it's research. This is just analysis. But um, yeah, trying to find other things to do, a community of people to hang out with, and go out to have meals with is something that's been helping me a lot. Take more regular breaks, and because otherwise, I'm the type of person who would just work on these things until I crash and burn, which is I think unfortunately very relatable when you're working on your passion projects.
I spent a couple of days not going to bed till 5 a.m. because I was stuck in coding mode. It's funny when it's like either you get into a game like Civ or Factory or something, or you end up in coding mode and do the same thing.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a little
Yep.
discipline for me to say, all right, I've got to stop now so that I'll have energy for tomorrow. And I'm not great about it sometimes, but I do I try to be consistent about my work start times and my work end times.
That is something I've picked up recently is setting a very specific cutoff time, like 10 p.m. every night. No matter what I'm doing, unless there's a specific reason, which isn't often, that's, no more working, gotta get some rest and play a game, go to bed, something like that, right?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of
Awesome.
a Faulkner quote when it comes to just being consistent and schedules, where he said something like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I only write when I'm inspired. Fortunately, I'm inspired at 9 a.m. every day.
Nice. I've heard that. Yeah. Brilliant. Um, I'm going to say that my most effective way to get rid of those distractions is to go somewhere else. Um, it's very hard for me to not to get distracted when I'm at home. Fortunately, for the most part, I've been able to have a small office to do that. And I know that's not always practical, but maybe that means, you know, going to Starbucks or something else with your laptop. And I know, again, if your development system is stuck in your home office, then you can't do that. Other suggestions I've heard in the past from people is close your door and put a sign up. You know, tell the rest of your family, look, we're going to all come to this agreement that you guys are going to allow me to have a certain amount of time to work on this. And if there's a sign on the door that says I'm working, then it means please only interrupt me if there's a real urgency.
But you've got to also promise them a stop time, not just a start time.
It goes right along with it, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Thankfully, my family is like all off in their rooms doing things most of the time, so we're all kind of doing the same thing.
Awesome. To kind of top off today's discussion, and what I really love about it is I've heard one. Well, there's been many topics. There's been one that was more prevalent than others, which is getting feedback from other people. And I think maybe this is a place, because we are always asking the question here as the SIG moderators, is how can this SIG help other developers accomplish their goals? So feedback is one of the things I've heard a lot. And I think that's a practical way that perhaps the SIG and its members can help other developers, is to have a specific place for that to happen. We've talked a lot about having a place for developers to showcase their work, but the counter to those ideas has always been, well, the problem is that this is a group of developers, not a group of players. So there's not a whole lot of value in just posting your project into this Discord. But there is value if we can or encourage people to provide feedback, and then you can get other devs giving you that feedback. So, for example, I posted a little thing in the comment section there. Maybe we can provide a structured way to give feedback to people that just have an idea. That was back to the discussion earlier about when to quit. Maybe we could structure a way to give feedback to prototypes. So we can talk among ourselves or whatever, see if we can turn something like that into reality. But the idea is not just providing a place for people to showcase their work, but to provide an intentional place. Perhaps we say whatever that is. The 15th of every month is provide feedback on your idea day. So what do you think, Tony? You understand what I'm saying? Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody else, is there value in that?
Yes. Another thing also is, I think that given the state of the industry now, something that the SIG should advocate and educate on is what indies did, and some indies still do, but what indies did before Steam, which was the Webring model of like, in the I'm old enough to remember when every indie would have like here are a couple of other indies that we partner with or uh that we like the work of. I think that with the way that the industry is going, um getting back into that is
What did you call it again, Michael? The what model?
it used to be called like the web ring model.
Oh, web ring. Gotcha. Right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know what a web ring is. Thank you.
But yeah. But it seems to have fallen by the wayside a little bit. You still see some of the older indies do it, are pre-Steam indies,
Sure,
but I
sure.
think
Right.
that it's something that needs to come back.
I love your idea. Yeah, I mean, I've been trying myself to think of how, maybe within Discord, I've been talking to another guy who has some ideas along these. Basically, how can we create a similar structure, for example, within Discord,
Right.
so
I mean,
that we can make a network of like Discord channels that get the same, share the same information or something like that. I don't know if that's what you
I
mean.
Yeah, I mean, I co-moderate a group that does this sort of thing for real-time strategy games specifically, but, and, I mean, it's a pretty active community, but it is interesting, because it's like, Discord does have a lot of features, like, I mean, we already have the features where we're pulling in info on events and stuff, but like in the OTS server I help run, we actually have the webhooks so that when OTS groups are posting their news in their announcements, it gets pulled into our server.
Yeah, we are actually pulling in events from servers that I've discovered that had relevant events for us as well. Something similar, I'm not sure how that might work
Yeah.
for
I can
pulling in people that want to review other people's work, for example.
yeah,
Carlos,
I can share the server on just as an example.
Carlos, did you have a thought on that?
I just wanted, yeah, I actually have done, I like the announcements idea. I've done a similar thing, not with announcements, but with servers, like on our studio Discord. Our studio's Discord is very small, but we added a channel that was like servers we love. So it's just like other servers that that our members might be interested in. This Discord is one of them, as well as another Discord that I really like. So I love that idea. I didn't realize that there was a term for it, and a system for it, and I would love to see that kind of stuff come back as well.
Okay. Well, that's a good closing note. I'm going to uh, just kind of leave that open for discussion when we get to the top of the week channel, and maybe something all the moderators can maybe work together on seeing how to implement something like this. I definitely know I have some other Discord channels that would probably be interested in participating in such a thing. Of course, the huge problem that we all have is information overload, right? So inviting a whole other set, all of the Discord channels, inviting each other to share information could end up in a literal web, a web of information that gets ignored because there's so much information. So I'm not sure how we tackle that issue in itself. But
yeah,
we all want to help
why...
each other. I think that's the core issue, Michael, that Michael's bringing up, is if we don't help each other, we fail. And I'm a big advocate for getting out of our silos and quit acting like we're in competition with each other, because we're not.
That's why we do it the way we do it in the server I work with. They basically, there's a channel called like RTS announcements, and we have all the webhooks to the other servers, like you have here with the events, and like there are like a maximum amount of hooks per channel. So we actually ended up doing 2 sets, but it's just a channel. Like, people can mute it if they don't want it, and yeah. So.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for joining again. We do this every month, so we'll have a new topic next month. I strongly encourage, I think the one thing that we need to really grow is for each one of us here to make it a point to share this channel with your other Discord channels, especially when we have an event like this, to get people's eyes on what we're doing, because discoverability, it's all about people even knowing that we exist. But we've been growing, and our that's great. We want to grow, but we also want to provide value to the people that join. All right. Any last minute comments?
If anyone does want to stick around for playtesting, I'm getting it ready.
Where are you going to do that?
I guess could do it here since everybody's here.
Okay. Well, I unfortunately do have to run, but
Okay.
but
yeah, we should connect sometime.
Absolutely, yeah, and feel free, to post an announcement or something, or to invite
did
people.
put it in the share section.
Yeah, maybe we need to have a weekly. I don't know what the answer is, but some sort of structured way to say, hey, every Monday we're going to do playtesting. I don't know what that looks like, but that's the part of it is to get people involved, so that they'll participate in that.
Yeah, okay.
All right, guys.
All right. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Tony's going to post this on YouTube. And maybe somewhere in the server, post a link to the YouTube channel, Tony.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks. Bye all.